welcome again to Gar Borras' Time Machine. Today we're going to be doing episode 16, and we're going to be talking all about the Twilight Zone. And this was one of Gar's all-time favorite TV shows, and he's the one that asked me hey, what do you think about doing an episode on Twilight Zone? I think it's a great idea. It's kind of different from anything we've done before, so let's get right into it. Gar, explain about why the Twilight Zone has such a special place in your heart.
Well, lots and lots of memories. I don't know anybody of my older generation.
Yeah.
God, it's hard for me to
say that. Yeah.
fathom that now. That I'm part of the older generation, because at the time when all of this stuff was going on, I thought of people like me as the older generation.
Yeah, you're one of those.
Now here I am.
Yeah, you're
part of that. Yeah. But back when I was the younger, this younger generation, it was a very popular thing that Twilight Zone used to come on, I think at around noon. Yeah. And that's basically when musicians get up. Okay, yeah. And I remember, just many memories of watching the reruns of Twilight Zone, and there's more to it than just TV show. It became a popular thing. I was in a band, back in the early '80s, and there was like a group of people that were part of this whole thing that just loved to hang out with each other, and every day during the week. Because, we were, doing music, and, most of us weren't really, doing jobs and doing all that kind of stuff. The focus was on music and making that successful. And so I just remember there was a lot of times that we used to meet up at noon and watch the Twilight Zone together. It was that much of a magnet to where in this band, we used to, meet together and watch the Twilight Zone, and then after the Twilight Zone, then we'd hang out and party and do what bands do.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I can't tell you about.
Yeah, and people should know that the show premiered all the way back in 1959. It was on there till 1964, and the show was created by screenwriter, television host, and narrator Rod Serling, who was an American actor born on December 25th, 1924. So this guy was actually born on Christmas Day. How unique. And he died at a very young age on June 28th, 1975, at the age of 50. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And what makes this such an interesting show is it's not like your typical weekly TV show back in the day where you get to know the characters and there's different storylines. This was again based around Rod Serling. He's a voice, a narrator, the guy that wrote a lot of his stuff, and it was different kind of stories every week where he was kind of a host narrator, but it was had different actors, so they weren't necessarily the same characters, and they're just kind of little televised short stories, which is kind of what made it so unique at the time. There really hadn't been anything like that before, really, since.
Oh, it was like a major juxtaposition compared to everything else that was going on. You had Leave It to Beaver, Mr. Ed, all these, TV shows that are upbeat and, very G-rated for just, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then all of a sudden you have, the Twilight Zone, totally the opposite of all of that. Just going from, happy and go lucky and all that to the dark side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What's the Twilight Zone?
It really, the show discovered for the people, behind the show, and the studios discovered there is an appetite for the dark side.
Yeah.
That show proved it, and just getting the show on TV was quite a struggle. It wasn't just something that they said, "Oh, okay, let's put it on."
Yeah.
It was quite a struggle to get that show on TV and even to keep it on TV.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of battles that went on behind the scenes that a lot of America doesn't know about. That were going on between Rod Serling and the studios to keep the show on and keep the whole idea behind the show, being that it's all about the Twilight Zone, the dark side.
Yeah,
Basically, that's what the Twilight Zone means is the dark side.
Yeah. And you made a couple of good points here. I kind of was reading the same thing. This is a show that, like many of the other ones we've talked about in past episodes, it was a real struggle just to kind of keep it on the air. And again, it lasted from 1959 to 1964. The very first episode aired on CBS on October 2nd, 1959. So that's how far back we're going. And it said Rod Serling fought hard to keep and maintain creative control of the show by hiring script writers who he trusted and respected.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that, but the studios weren't all that behind the show. Even though when you look back now, I mean, how could they be so stupid? You know what I mean? That's the way we look at it now. Because but at the time, it was a culture shift, because, there was a real struggle between, proper America and the rebellious side of society. Because that, we've touched on it many times in our interviews is, there's always a constant social struggle between the proper part of society and the rebellious part of society. And that's just another reason why a lot of people really, latched onto the show, is because the show appealed to the rebellious side.
Yeah, it was so different too at the time, and it should be noted that while we're kind of focusing on the original Twilight Zone series, because that was obviously was the original, it was the most popular, but it should be noted after they canceled this, and there's all this struggle to kind of keep the original series on the air, they brought it back to TV like 3 different times, trying to kind of revamp it because they thought, okay, the Twilight Zone. After the fact, it's become a popular thing, and they tried 3 different times to revamp it. But like with a lot of things, when they revamped it, Rod Serling's no longer here, so it's not exactly the same. But at that time, over the course of history, when they start showing reruns of this, it becomes popular, very much like Star Trek, just through the reruns. And they think, okay, we'll revamp it. We're going to bring back a different version. But nothing was quite like the original.
No, and that's why for me, it's all about the original.
Yeah.
The original is the trailblazer, because that trail never really existed before that show came on, and it really. It was kind of like one of those, game changers, trail shifters, kind of things that happened during that time, because everything that was really going on, was, happy-go-lucky, proper America, what we used to call milquetoast.
Yeah.
There was a reason why, that whole milk toast became is because that's really what was popular, on TV at that time. And Twilight Zone was like so opposite of that, and so dark and everything. And but then again, when you look at the Twilight Zone and you compare it to everything else that was popular on TV at the time, and Twilight Zone was so groundbreaking and so creative.
And so different,
It was a place, Rod Serling created a place for people to become creative where, he was taking the boundaries away and saying, hey, let's go into this area, even though it's, nobody else really thinks we should, let's go.
Yeah, that's,
and they started, taking on, just such profound subject matters and things like that, things that other people wouldn't touch on. Twilight Zone would.
Yeah, they back at that time, they were, the networks were very careful, even the film industry, about what they would touch upon. I mean, even go back to shows like Leave It to Beaver or The Brady Bunch. I used to love watching those because, I used to be like, man, why when I get in trouble can't my dad be like that? You see Mike Brady on the Brady Bunch tell one of the boys, well, son, as long as you know what you did was wrong, that's punishment enough. We even talked about this, on some of the past episodes. Stuff like even on the Brady Bunch again. Back in the day when that was being filmed, you couldn't even, they're in the bathroom and everything, and you see a sink, but they don't even have a toilet in what's supposed to be the bathroom, and you're just supposed to assume it's in there. Mom and Dad, didn't even sleep together in the bed. They had to be on top of the bed, Things were so different back then, and that's why, like you said, Twilight Zone is kind of a little refreshing because it's a little more maybe of a realistic view that the world's not maybe always a happy place. There are kind of strange and dark things that maybe deserve to kind of have a spotlight put on them. But I was also reading that Sterling believed that the science fiction topic in the Twilight Zone would not be controversial with sponsors or network executives or the general public, and that would help to avoid, having to have any kind of censorship. And originally, it should be noted, Gar, but each of the episodes were 30 minutes, and then later down the line, they would start doing hour episodes.
Yes, and you really kind of touched on that whole thing about the struggle between because the network executives wanted to portray this unrealistic view
of the world,
of how society is.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted. It's almost like they were thinking that they were in control of how society should think and everything, and it should be this rosy, sunny day, flowers, and everything's happy-go-lucky, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they wanted it, Twilight Zone was, kind of like the punk rockers of the time, because they were shoving real life in your face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's very punk rocker, in its attitude, in a time that's way before punk rock. But those attitudes still existed even at that time, and it's so funny because whenever we remember back then, we don't remember these people having punk rock attitudes in the 1950s. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah.
Is when we think of the 50s, us, in our mind right now, we think of Happy Days. And
bingo. You
know
got
what
it.
I mean?
Yeah.
We don't think of Twilight Zone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which you see what I'm saying is it's very punk rock what Twilight Zone was doing at that time, and a lot of people don't realize that it was very, very rebellious.
Yeah, and just to kind of carry that home, when you talk about when you originally viewed the Twilight Zone it came on at 12 noon. Well, I was reading recently that the show is currently in syndication on MeTV. That's a cable channel a lot of people get. And here's the funny thing with that. Okay, again, because it's a Twilight Zone, it's kind of this dark, kind of science fiction-y type of thing. Oddly enough, you got to check your listings for what time it comes on. But when I was looking, they air it late at night because they think maybe not everyone will want to see it, or people tune in, they want to see the Twilight Zone late at night. So even where they're gonna, what time of the day they're gonna air the show now, plays into the dark atmosphere of what the show was.
Well, just so you know, I was enjoying watching. I was like hooked on Twilight Zone well before I was doing those meeting together with my band and stuff like that. I was watching the Twilight Zone with my sister, and just. There was just so many episodes that were like, disturbing. To say the least. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sure that part of this whole thing, and I'm sure we're probably, because we only have really an hour.
Yeah.
But to kind of go over I've got my favorites.
Yeah. See, when I was doing my research, I was trying to think. Okay, I got we've only kind of scratched the surface, but I got a lot of cool facts and trivia that I came up with that we'll be getting into as the show goes along. But I will tell you, see, one interesting thing about doing the Twilight Zone is it's very different because, like, talking about something like Star Trek, where you got the same characters, or even Happy Days you mentioned. This is a different show because the only thing you have to look forward to every week is Rod Serling's the narrator. He's the host of it. He's writing a lot of his stuff. That's the only constant, but. When you tune in every week, you really didn't know what you're going to get. It's because it's going to be different actors, different players. It's going to be a totally different story than the week before. And that's what made it kind of cool to tune into the Twilight Zone, because you really didn't know what you were going to get, except that it was going to be vastly different than what you saw the week before.
Then again, just another thing about the Twilight Zone. Completely different formula from what the other TV shows.
Yeah, and if you look,
completely different formula.
And if you look at TV history, and you talk about TV, and you talk with TV historians, they typically tell you, well, very much like, writing a song or forming a band. They'll tell you, well, there's a certain formula you got to follow. You got to have likable characters. You got to have stories that people can follow.
That's exactly how the execs think.
Yeah, but that's why this worked, because it was so outside of the box, so outside of that formula.
Well, the show had extreme popularity in reruns.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, look at how many decades the show has lasted. It's even being shown today on retro TV shows.
Oh yeah.
Where they where the whole station is all like old TV shows, but I mean, the stuff is still being broadcast today, and the first episodes aired way back in the late 50s.
Oh yeah, and yeah.
So it's really hard to put your mind wrapped around that, because I mean, I don't see that show. Everything always winds up taking its course, but I see that show still lasting a lot longer.
Yeah.
In popularity, in the retro. Because there's always going to be people that's what they're into, retro.
Yeah.
It's. But at the time, it was, groundbreaking,
revolutionary.
It really changed.
Yeah.
It was a game changer. It really changed a lot for TV, and the popularity of the show lasting so many years after it was canceled, and still going, just is an undeniable statement. I mean, the writing, that's basically what you were saying. The formula for the popularity of the show and the focal point that Rod Serling wanted to put on it was the writing, because the star of the show were the writers.
Oh yeah.
Everything else was interchangeable.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about what you just said, because to be honest, I think the last really great TV sitcoms. I mean, we're going to get into this in a future episode, because me and Gar were talking about for a future episode actually kind of doing one on the history of a TV guide, which is just amazing. But just to kind of make the point that you just made, a lot of the stuff that I find myself like watching, like when I'm at work, I will tape stuff to watch later, when I get home and stuff. I'm taping a lot of these old favorite TV shows. I mean, stuff like Stanford Son, Good Times, Happy Days, Bob Newhart, Cheers, you name it. And to me, they just don't make TV shows of that caliber anymore. In fact, like I said, I think the last great TV sitcoms they made, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was in the 90s. But, you get a little later into the 90s, and it gets to a point where, because they go think everything's a formula. Well, the ratings are low, so we're gonna take this show out there. We're not gonna make any more TV sitcoms. Everything's gonna be a reality show or a game show. And it got to that. It's got into that point where, again, the quality of the shows just aren't what they used to be. And if anything new is created, it usually lasts maybe a season or two at the most.
You want to know why?
Yeah.
Is because the networks, the people that work in the offices, which are not creative people, they're graph people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've talked about this.
They're analytical people. They take data and they look at, and it has absolutely nothing to do with creative, and because they're the ones that finance these projects.
They have a say, yeah.
The only thing that they're interested in is things that show up on their graphs and show up on all of that stuff. They try to stack the deck in their favor that it's going to be successful by the data that that they've collected and everything, and they're trying to guarantee the success of a show by that.
Yeah.
And that's your difference is now that the control has been wrestled away from the creative people and put in the financial people's hands.
Yeah.
And they don't care anything about blazing new trails. They don't care about being creative. All they care about is how successful the show is going to be. They want it to be hugely successful right out of the blocks.
Yeah, like here. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing with what you're saying is, you can kind of skew the data any way you really want to bend it. I mean, perfect example of that is I was watching the news the other day. Here in Los Angeles, we've been having all these smash and grab robberies at the different stores and stuff, and then you have a DA get on TV the other day, and he has this big press conference saying, "Oh well, it's just all rumors that the crime rate is up. we haven't had an increase in crime. Those are just stories being told. But then you come to find out the reason for that is not because that the crime isn't going up. It's because they don't prosecute anything. And so if you go and look at their data, according to their data, crime has just stayed the same because they're not prosecuting anybody. But so to get back to the Twilight Zone, I was also reading that Rod Serling originally wanted this guy Richard Egan to do the narration for the Twilight Zone, but he was unable to do it due to his strict studio contract, and so because of that, Rod Serling kind of just decided, well, then I guess I'll do it.
Well, he actually got pushed into doing it. He really didn't want to do it. It's something that, because the original first, season, or a season or two, he wasn't narrating. You didn't physically see him. He was just a voiceover. Yeah,
and what's funny is not only is Rod Serling the kind of the creator of the Twilight Zone and one of the writers, but he because of being the narrator, he became the voice of that show. And what I mean so much that when we think of the Twilight Zone all these years later, he's the voice for that show. He's what we think, and that's why when they tried to rebrand the shows with other people, it just didn't work because no matter how much you want to try to get into the new version of the Twilight Zone, maybe you just can't because you got a certain idea. Kind of like when after seeing Richard Dawson host the Family Feud for all those years, and then they decided to get a new host. Some people liked it, some people didn't. It was different, but it just wasn't the same for many people, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he is so associated with the show. He's iconic with the show. You can't mention Twilight Zone without visualizing him standing there, talking about the episode before it, even comes on, kind of giving you a lead in to the storyline, to where this particular story is going. You can't think of Twilight Zone without visualizing that in your head.
Yeah.
It's so part of it, and there's so many other shows because of the success of the Twilight Zone. So many other shows followed.
Yeah, I don't know which one.
Alfred Hitchcock Presents. You have, just so many other shows that were spawned because of the success of Twilight Zone. But I just remember as a kid, with my sister watching episodes, reruns of the Twilight Zone back in the 60s. And, it's so weird because, I think, there are some parents that would be kind of, iffy about letting their kids watch an episode like, that one with Talking Tina.
Yeah.
I think there would be parents nowadays that would have reservations about, their kids watching an episode like that. But my sister and I, we're watching a show like that. And I just remember, because it was so creepy, we loved it.
Oh, yeah. And, and like we're talking about, like I was going to say, funny you brought up Alfred Hitchcock, because I was going to say, I don't know what came first, Twilight Zone or Alfred Hitchcock, but in any event, Alfred Hitchcock, is a director and a writer too, and if you watch any of his old episodes on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, it's very much the same type of thing where he comes out and introduces it, and up until Alfred Hitchcock, I don't know that directors were really ever became iconic or were kind of a celebrity. I think, he might have been the very first, but it was obviously, like you said, modeled after Twilight Zone. And the cool thing about Rod Serling coming out and doing his little introduction is, Twilight Zone was kind of thinking man's television that because it was a little different, people would tune in and you get a little different story every week. And maybe you watch an episode and you don't always understand right away what it's about, but by him coming out and kind of saying, okay, this is what this week's episode about, it helps people, I think, to understand, what it was about, what they were watching.
Well, it's, all I can can say is the writers were the star of that show. If the writing wasn't as good as it was, the show would never have been as successful as it was. You know, it's you know, you can take every other element.
Yeah.
But if you take away the writing, and it just falls right through the floor. You know what I mean? There's just nothing would hold it up except for the writing, and that's the thing about the people that try to base whatever their decisions on at the studios on data. You know, data will never replace good writing. Yeah, good story writing. Yeah, I don't care what you do. The same thing is going on with movies. You know, I mean, you know, there's a very large portion of society that really doesn't care about, you know, the thinking man's this or anything. All they want to do is they want to go to the theater and be dazzled. That's it. Yeah. And so they'll watch a movie that is just loaded with all kinds of special effects and all kinds of CGI and all kinds of stuff to dazzle your eyes. You know, crazy action, people doing things that there's no way you can physically do those things in real life. But in movies, everybody's superhuman, and they can fall down, you know, a 10-foot shaft and not even wind up being hurt. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's just, you know, things are impossible, you know, and that's what's going on. And then when you actually look at the actual writing, it's just super weak. Yeah, you know, it's just a whole bunch of catchphrases thrown in, you know, so people will have something to repeat after they're walking away from the movie. You know what I mean? But it really doesn't have anything to do with, testing, you know, or entertaining your intellect. Oh yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's all razzle dazzle and no storyline. Yeah, and that's what's going on in movies, because those same people that work for the studios, they look at that data and they go, you know, because there is a very large portion of our society that they don't care about, you know, good writing. They just want to be razzled and dazzled. And they go to those movies and they're happy. But there's another large part of our society that, you know, wants to be intellectually stimulated, and wants to have creative writing, and wants to have a storyline, wants to have somebody come up with a storyline that surprises you. Oh my gosh, I never saw that coming. You know, that's the elements of good story writing is having a lot to do with more entertaining your intellect. Yeah. And so that's really your separation. Twilight Zone was all about the writing and all about the intellect. Yeah. But you know, it's the battle between the creative and the office workers that are non-creative. You know, because there's a constant battle between the two. Yeah. You know, right now the power is in the hands of the data people and not in the creative people. And you see what we have. The only way we can watch things that are more intellect driven for entertainment is going to be more independent. You know, big, huge studio budget, because the independents don't have these huge budgets, and they rely much more on storyline. And so that's basically where you have to go. You have to go to also TV, because for a long time TV was always considered minor leagues. For entertainment. It was really nowadays that line. People that did movies way back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s didn't do TV. And people that did TV that tried to break from TV into going into movies, rarely did the TV people break that barrier. And and there was a barrier between the two.
And here's an interesting thing, Gar, too. Talking about kind of the struggle with the the studios and that. I'll give you a perfect example. I recently went to see the new Ghostbusters, and my friend told me the night before I went, he said, "Okay, now before don't leave the studio, don't leave the theater until after the credits roll, because there's going to be a little ending, like a little preview." And then it's become a thing like that where people know, okay, well, don't leave. There's gonna be something else to watch after the credits roll, and then you're like, okay, maybe there's another part to this, and that's a lot of the studios start doing stuff like this. But I was talking about Rod Sterling wanting to kind of keep control of the show. It said Sterling sold the rights to the Twilight Zone to CBS because the episodes had cost so much money to produce every single episode. He feared that his production company would not be able to recoup the cost of all the episodes, which often went way over budget. This is kind of what we were talking about, like with Star Trek back in the days, and so because of that, he sold the rights to the show, and that's why I think too, when after he died and they tried to kind of revamp the Twilight Zone, we can colorize it now. It's going to be a lot better than what it originally was. A lot of people kind of got turned off to that. They said, no, the Twilight Zone was supposed to be black and white. Kind of like talking about when Mel Brooks made Young Frankenstein. That was a thing. He said, no, I want it to be black and white like the original film. And the studio's like, no, we can colorize it. He's like, no, we're going to, just to make sure you don't pull any tricks, we're going to shoot it on black and white film to make sure, And so once again, people think they know better. Like, we're going to make it better than what the original was. And then the audience kind of rejected all the revamped versions.
Well, there's always going to be a battle between the creative people and the non-creative.
Yeah.
And the non-creative always thinks that they can always go to their data to prove their point.
Yeah.
And, but the bottom line is creativity cannot be controlled by, or even predicted by data.
Yeah. Now,
they're two completely separate things, that one has everything to do with whether something eventually could become iconic, and the other one is only a way of trying to read things to try to take the risk out of it.
Yeah, in fact, so much
you see what I'm saying?
So much
they're trying to take the risk out of it because they're utilizing data, and they're trying to take. But in order for something to become iconic, there has to be a groundbreaking element to it, a certain amount of risk, and the data people don't want to take risks. That's why they're utilizing the data. They're trying to stack the deck in their favor that it's going to bring in massive amounts of dollars, because that's all they care about. Massive amounts of dollars. They could care less about the future or whether it's groundbreaking or whether it becomes iconic. They could care less about any of that. All they want to do is guarantee that there's going to be a windfall. That's all they care about. The others care about creative, blazing a new trail, keep, allowing creativity to evolve. One can, there's a huger amount of risk, but you have the element that if it does become hugely successful, it becomes iconic. It becomes a game changer. It changes things.
Yeah, and money.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, in regards to money and stuff, a lot of these old classic films and TV shows we talk about, a lot of them are what is considered property now. I'll give you a perfect example. Like they talking about shows like the Twilight Zone, Star Trek, trying to cancel these shows from the minute they were on the air, back in the day, and now they're seen as property. For example, you can see stuff like this, maybe like old TV shows. Oh, we can stream that. We can stream all the seasons of Twilight Zone on, the Paramount Network or Netflix or whatever. It's a property. People.
Or TV Land.
Yeah, TV Land and My TV stuff, Me TV, like we were talking about. So different things like that. There's a place for these shows, even though the studios might not even care much for them, but people will tune in. We can stream the whole seasons now, and people can check it out now. Get ready to fall off your seat here, Gar, because I'm going to tell you something that's going to shock the hell out of you. You're talking about the Twilight Zone and what that is, okay? I found something interesting. Rod Sterling thought originally that he had come up with the Twilight Zone term, the word, on his own. But he later found out that what the Twilight Zone actually is, it's a phrase used by Air Force pilots when they cross the day and night sides above the world.
Well, the only thing I can think of is trying to visualize what that pilot sees.
Yeah.
It's got to be amazing.
Oh yeah, but see, that's what I loved about researching this, because I had no idea about this until I read this. And what's interesting is think of Rod Sterling when he finds out Twilight Zone. I mean, that's kind of a unique phrase. I mean, he had to kind of just come up with it, top of his brain and find out that there's actually a meaning for that. That's pretty amazing.
Well, it's, all I can say is there was so much, what he had created between him and the writers was a extremely fertile ground to be creative. He took away limits. It's like what you were talking about earlier. In other TV shows, you could not touch on subject matters that they were taking on the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
And the only reason why the Twilight Zone was able to touch on those taboo subjects at the time was because they were portraying it in a fictional setting.
Yeah.
Where it really didn't apply to what was going on in society at that time. It was a completely and total fictional setting, which allowed them to still touch onto those subject matters. It was kind of like an end around.
Yeah, it's part of it
the studios, the people that would decide what could be put on and what can't be put on. But there was a definite thing that no other TV shows during that time could touch on those subject matters.
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of that
they
is
found a way around it.
That's part of the beauty of that is the audience tunes in and they're digging what they see, but there's part of you that doesn't want to believe that this stuff could really happen. You're like, okay, it's made up. It's make believe. Couldn't no way in hell this could really happen. And I was also reading kind of to further discuss how much it costs to kind of produce each episode. To save on production cost in season 2, the show started being shot on.
I hated those episodes.
Shot on videotape rather than on film, and you can definitely see the difference.
Well, and I tried watching those,
Yeah.
and it completely lost the whole feel.
And again,
It really did.
that when you're just looking simply at how to save the most money, which that's an important thing, I guess, but that's what happens. Kind of equality suffers as a result, and you can see that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I was reading on May 30th, 2004, the Twilight Zone was listed number 8 on TV Guide's list of top 25 cult TV shows. So, even in 2004, it's considered like a cult classic TV show. But people voted it, number 8. So that kind of speaks volumes of what people think of a show.
Well, just another thing. Virtually every one of the actors and actresses in all of those episodes are all passed away.
Yeah.
They're all gone.
Well,
it's all made by a generation that's gone.
For the most part,
that generation, put on a great show. A great show. And then there's another thing. It was a fertile ground for breaking new actors and actresses, because the history of all these actors and actresses that went on to become hugely successful in their careers did episodes on the Twilight Zone when nobody knew who they were.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a literal parade of massively successful actors and actresses. It's a literal who's who. Now, because this generation is past now, and we're so many years removed, there's going to be a younger generation that are going to look at it, and they're not going to even know who these people were and what kind of success that they had after. As far as they know, they don't even know who these people are. But at that time, they did those parts when they were really nobodies, and they went on to huge amounts of success. After doing these episodes.
Very true, Gar. But there's one person that I can't believe you kind of forgot about that is still alive. I think, in fact, he appears in the very first Twilight Zone, if I'm not mistaken, William Shatner. But, he's about 80 years old, so he's the last of the remaining folks, as you say. But now, just to kind of also shine a light on how important the writing was, like you were saying, I found this fact to be very interesting. When Rod Sterling invited Twilight Zone viewers to write a creative script for the show, he received 14,000 submissions, and he actually read 500. So out of, you don't expect the guy to read every 14,000 of the submissions, but he read a total of 500, and of those 500 scripts that he read, believe it or not, only 2 of the 14,000 submissions were good enough, and none of them were used, but he invited people to kind of, would you like to write an episode of The Twilight Zone? And that just kind of boggles the mind with 14,000 submissions.
Well, it kind of gives you an indication of how high the bar was set.
Yeah, and exactly what I was getting ready to say, because, it says that he still read 500 of these, and the reason none of them were used is he did not feel that they fit the show's format.
To me, the ultimate, the whole thing that started this thing between you and I doing these interviews and doing all of this stuff, was just kind of, voicing about, about the dark side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just kind of spawned this whole thing that we're doing now. And even though it's gone way farther than just the dark side, it's become more of a pop culture, thing. But the dark side is part of pop culture. A major part of pop culture, and You know, a lot of these episodes, are like the ultimate to me.
Yeah.
I don't. All I can do is speak for myself
Of
and
course.
my own personal preferences.
Yeah.
But I just absolutely. I love creepy. I love stuff that's creepy. I don't love stuff that's blood and gore.
No,
and I
yeah.
don't love, what I mean. If it's got a really, really good storyline and it's got elements that are very, very creepy, you got me.
Like,
and there's quite a few episodes of the Twilight Zone that are, that just like are way up there, as far as like being creepy. I mean, like I was talking about earlier, Talking Tina.
Oh yeah.
Is one hell of a creepy episode. To Serve Man. I had no idea that that's what it
was about.
What it was about until the very end. The first time I ever saw that episode, and what a great episode. But there's just there's a lot of episode, and they're really, really creepy.
Oh yeah, Gar, and what I love about these shows we do, Gar Borras' Time Machine, that's the whole idea behind what we do. Is it is endless on what we can cover. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, I've enjoyed all the episodes we've done. This is episode 16 today, so I think we've come a long way in the last year since we launched this, and just like, for example, today, doing this episode, other things have popped in my mind. Oh, that would make for a great episode. And that's the fun of doing this, is just having a discussion. Things pop up in the conversation. Things pop up in our mind. And like when I was doing my research for the show today, I happened to just come across accidentally the fact that having nothing to do with the Twilight Zone, but stuff pops up online that we talked about Frankenstein, we talked about Young Frankenstein, we talked about Dracula, and like the original Frankenstein and Dracula are like 90 years old, and I come to find out the original Wolfman movie, again, another Universal horror movies, one of the original horror movies.
Another iconic one. You can't mention the others without adding the Wolfman.
Celebrating 80 years, not quite as old as those other ones, but 80 years, that's quite a legacy. So I was thinking, we're going to have to do an episode on that, but there's, and it's so much to kind of talk about: TV, music, and classic films, and we could talk about newer films too. There's no end to what we could talk about, and that's what makes it so much fun. Because when people tune into these shows, new shows we post every 2 weeks, they don't really know until they tune in what they're going to get.
Yes, and I can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
For inviting me to do it. It's just turned into something that I just absolutely look forward to doing every time.
Yeah.
Every one of them, I have a passion involved.
You can hear that too,
you know what I mean?
In your voice. Yeah.
And, the Twilight Zone, it goes back to my childhood. I was watching them when I was very, very young. It became part of, my, younger adult years.
Yeah.
Having this thing where, a group of friends would meet every day together to watch the Twilight Zone together. And it just became a regular thing that everybody would wind up getting together, and we would sit down and we would watch that particular episode of the Twilight Zone. It's had a long-lasting, part, but there are just, there's certain things, that, even if I'm flipping the channels, if I run across an episode that, oh my gosh, here's that episode with, Billy Mummy as the kid, Wish Him to the Cornfield.
Yeah.
I will still stop and watch those episodes because it is so creepy.
I'm right with you, my friend. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen every single episode of Happy Days or Three's Company. I mean, it's getting to the point where every time, like you said, I pass by an episode, I've seen every single episode. I don't know how many times, but I have to see it. And as I'm sitting there watching it, enjoying it for the umpteenth time, I know a lot of the lines. I start saying the lines as they're being said just because they mean that much to me, you know. And like you said, I think part of it is the fact that we were there. These are shows that we, you know, grew up on. And so, of course, it's got a special place in your heart. Now, to kind of wrap up today's episode, I just got a few more facts I want to kind of put out there. I was reading that Rod Serling wrote 92 of the 156 episodes in the original TV series. So he wrote a good portion of those, you know, those scripts. And that's why he's such a big part. He really is the voice and the face of Twilight Zone. If that was his original intent, I don't think it was, but that's what he became.
Well, I don't know the truth of it because I never really did any research. But I kind of heard through the grapevine that Lucille Ball, behind the scenes was, played an instrumental hand on helping him to actually get Twilight Zone off the ground and getting the studios to actually consider doing the Twilight Zone. She was a force behind the scenes that a lot of people really don't know about.
And you know, it's amazing because of course when you think of Lucille Ball, we all think of how much we loved I Love Lucy, and it's kind of interesting because I've seen there's a new movie out this week called Being the Ricardos. About Lucy and Desi, and it's funny in doing these shows how much Lucille Ball comes up, because also when we did the episode on Star Trek, she was a very big player behind the scenes trying to help keep that show on the air. So it's kind of interesting to see what a big role played Lucy Ball played in some of these classic TV shows that besides just I Love Lucy. Very, very interesting, you know.
Well, the Paramount Studios that we see right there on Sunset, that used to be Desilu Studios.
Yeah. And you know,
a lot of people don't know that, but originally Paramount Studios was Desilu, and that's the creation of Lucy and Desi.
And also, before we wrap it up, because you mentioned some of the celebrities that got their start on the Twilight Zone, just to kind of drop some names here. The Twilight Zone helped to launch the careers of Robert Redford, Veronica Cartwright, Robert Duvall, Leonard Nimoy. I had no idea about that. And these were all unknown actors when they first appeared on the Twilight Zone. Of course, would go on to have very successful careers.
Mm-hmm. Charles Bronson.
Yeah, that's another one. And then I was reading
Elizabeth Montgomery.
There you go. And when the show went from airing from 30-minute episodes to hour-long episodes, at the time the hour-long episodes were not very popular. They were not received well by the audience. But today, the hour-long episodes are much more highly regarded than they were when they originally aired, which is kind of interesting. And unfortunately, I never knew the difference. Yeah, because you were so into it. In fact, I just loved the episodes. In fact, there were probably some episodes where you almost thought, that seems like it ended a little quickly. And then this is another historical fact. On August 11th, 2009, the U.S. Postal Service issued a Twilight Zone postal stamp with a photo of Rod Serling himself on the stamp. Pretty cool, huh?
Yes. We were just talking about earlier. You can't mention Twilight Zone without
he's the man. Yeah.
Visualizing him in your head.
Yeah, and
they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and Gar, check your Facebook Messenger later. I sent you. I don't know if you saw. I sent you something last night, and this is what it's in regards to. For you to check out, I think you'll dig it. But Michael Jackson sampled Rod Serling's narration in his song "Threatened." He sampled from several episodes, but the two most noticeable ones are The Twilight Zone, It's a Good Life, and Twilight Zone in his image. Now again, in doing the research, this is the last thing I came across last night. I thought I need a little something extra to end the show, give it a little extra pizzazz, and I came across this, and this is it, because I mean, play the sample of the song I sent you later, Gar. You'll just be impressed, and you'll know right away that's Rod Serling's voice doing the narration throughout the song. But what Michael Jackson, how he used Rod Serling's voice in this song, it was just amazing. A very unique song. I've never heard of a song myself before this, so it's kind of being a Twilight Zone fan, and then you listen to the whole song. It's a very interesting thing. But I think, wow, Michael Jackson must have been a Twilight Zone fan himself, I guess, to go to all that trouble of featuring his narration in one of his songs.
Well, I mean, I think he probably was. I mean, he came out with the album Thriller, does the video, so he has that element, in part of, some of his creative work, which, I'm sure reflects, what he enjoyed, which I'm sure is similar to what I was enjoying at that time too.
Yeah.
I'm sure, he enjoyed the creative writing and everything, just like everybody else did. There was just, there are legions and legions and legions of people that grew up on the Twilight Zone, and the things that I voiced in this interview, I'm just basically voicing what a huge amount of people during the same time felt the same way and enjoyed the show the same way that I did.
Yeah, and I think that's why doing this show that you and me do makes it so fun, because this was Gar's idea to do the Twilight Zone, and I think that's why this show came out so good today, because you have such a passion for it. And in doing the research on my end, what I found interesting is I found out a lot more about this show than what I thought I knew. I mean, I had no idea there was a Twilight Zone a postal stamp. I had no idea that Michael Jackson sampled the narration for one of his songs. And then I think the most interesting thing I got out of my research, what I hope people get when they listen back to this, is like you, I thought the Twilight Zone, okay, that's kind of on the dark side. That's what that is. Come to find out, it's a term that has nothing to do with being on the dark side. I guess that was Rod Serling's, intent, but what it actually means is something to do with pilots flying above the hemisphere. And I thought, well, actually learned something from watching this old classic TV show and talking about it.
I'd like to see pilots. I would love to be able to be right there and be able to see that, because I got a feeling it's something that'll take your breath away. Yeah,
and so we're going to wrap the show up. Before we do, I want to let people listening to this know that you can go check out, we just posted our episode 15, which was the most memorable movie lines. That was a real fun episode to do. And,
oh my gosh, the number is getting big.
Yeah, it really is, and it's kind of a steady flow. But yeah, I love it, and I was able to go online and find some pictures of some of the actual lines that we posted along with the show. I think people are going to dig that. And like we were talking about, one of the lines in there was, "You can't handle the truth." And just as that line is being said, a picture of that comes up. So that's pretty cool. And Gar and I are planning to do two more. The year is wrapping up as we talk. 2 more episodes for the year. Which next episode we're going to do in 2 weeks is going to be a holiday show. It's going to be a show based on "It's a Wonderful Life." And then Gar also right before the end of the year, we're going to also do an episode on Scrooge. That's one of his all-time favorite Christmas shows. So we have 2 holiday shows coming up to look forward to. So Gar, if I do not talk to you before then, you have a rockin' Christmas holiday, and we'll be talking to you before the New Year. So we have that to look forward to. Anything else you want to say, my friend?
No, you pretty much covered it.
I think so.
I'm just so glad we got a chance to do one on the Twilight Zone. After you end, this episode, stay on the line, because there's something I want to talk about.
Will do.
That you touched on that I think would be,
fun for a future episode.
Considered.
Okay, will do, my friend. Hold on.